You live your life walking on eggshells, not because the world told you to, but because something inside you convinced you that being loud, being seen, being powerful was dangerous. You keep your thoughts quiet, your dreams postponed, your opinions softened, all in the name of playing it safe. But here's the truth you've probably never said out loud. The weakness that makes you stay silent, play small, and doubt yourself. It's not part of who you are. It's something that was installed in you. And unless you confront it, it will run your life forever. In his writings, Friedrich Nietzsche didn't just explore philosophy. He exposed the psychological chains people wear without knowing it. He saw how society tames the human spirit, how it teaches people to call their submission goodness, their fear modesty, and their silence wisdom. But Nietzsche wasn't impressed. He saw it for what it was, weakness disguised as virtue. The danger isn't that you're weak. The danger is that you've started to believe your weakness is a moral choice, that playing small is somehow noble. That shrinking yourself earns you love, respect, or safety. But ask yourself, when you look at the times you've stayed quiet, in rooms where your voice should have echoed, did that silence make you feel powerful or invisible? When you agreed just to avoid confrontation, did that make you wise or resentful? And when you held back your true self just to be accepted, did you feel loved or hollow? That's the war Nietzsche spoke about. Not a war of armies, but a war within. A war between who you are and who you've been told to be. Most people lose that war without even realizing they're in one. And the worst part? They call their defeat peace. But peace without power is just surrender. And silence without choice is just fear wearing a mask. If you want to break out of this pattern, if you want to destroy the part of you that doubts, hides, and obeys without question, then you're going to have to face some uncomfortable truths. This isn't about motivation. This is about transformation. Because Nietzsche believed that the most dangerous threat to your future isn't what happens outside you. It's what you allow to grow inside you. And if you don't destroy that weakness, it will destroy your potential. But here's what most people get wrong. They think this weakness is just fear. It's not. It's not just about being nervous or shy or introverted. No, this weakness is deeper. It's a mental virus, a program, a subtle voice that runs underneath everything you do, whispering, "Don't stand out, don't say that, don't try too hard, you're not ready, you're not enough." It shows up in your decisions. You choose the safer path, not because it's right, but because it's familiar. You keep quiet in meetings, not because you don't have ideas, but because you're afraid they'll be judged. You say yes when you want to say no, because you'd rather be liked than respected. That's the weakness we're talking about. And it doesn't come out screaming. It wears a smile. It pretends to protect you. It says, stay small and you'll stay safe. But safe from what, exactly? From failure or from your own greatness? Nietzsche warned about this. He called it the morality of the herd, a system that convinces the individual to suppress their strength, their creativity, their raw power, all in the name of belonging. And society rewards it. Be nice, be agreeable, don't rock the boat. But let me ask you, when has anyone ever built a life they were proud of by following those rules? Think about it. You scroll through social media and see people speaking boldly, creating, moving forward, and something inside you burns, doesn't it? Not jealousy, not hate, but recognition, because you know you've got something inside you too. You've just been taught to doubt it. And here's where it gets even more dangerous. The more you obey that inner weakness, the more it becomes your identity. You start to say, that's just who I am. I'm not confident. I'm not that type of person. But is that true? Or is it just who you've learned to be? Because weakness isn't something you're born with. It's something you practice. Every time you silence yourself to keep the peace, every time you lower your standards to keep someone around, every time you hold back because you fear being misunderstood, the weakness gets stronger every time you surrender. So the question isn't, why am I like this? The question is, who taught me that this was the only way to survive? Let that sink in. And when it does, you'll start to see the bigger picture. Because this wasn't just something that came out of nowhere. It was planted slowly, systematically. From the moment you could speak, the world began shaping you. Not into your true self, but into a version of you that wouldn't make too much noise. Think back. Maybe it started at school. You raised your hand with excitement, only to be told your answer was wrong. Laughter followed. Embarrassment set in. And just like that, a seed of silence was planted. Or maybe you were told, don't brag, don't talk back, be humble, be polite. And none of those things are wrong in isolation. But when they're used to mute your inner voice, to suppress your instinct to stand tall, that's not humility, that's submission dressed up as manners. This is where Nietzsche's warning becomes piercingly relevant. He wrote, "They muddy the waters to make them seem deep. Society wraps its own fears in rules, then teaches you to live by them. But these rules don't serve your growth, they serve your obedience." Look at the modern workplace. You're told to speak up, be a leader, take initiative. But the moment you challenge the status quo, people get uncomfortable. You're labeled too much, difficult, arrogant. So what do? You shrink, you adapt, you bite your tongue. And over time, that becomes your default mode. Even friendships can do this. How many times have you downplayed your goals so someone else wouldn't feel insecure? How often have you apologized for your success or kept your dreams quiet so you wouldn't seem delusional? It's subtle, it's constant, and it's deadly. Because what starts as accommodation becomes erasure. You're not born doubting yourself, you're taught to. And here's the cruel irony. The people who instill that doubt in you, they usually mean well. Parents trying to protect you, teachers trying to mold you, friends trying to relate to you. But intention doesn't erase the impact. You were conditioned to be less, not out of malice, but out of fear, because the world doesn't know what to do with someone who owns their power unapologetically. But now that you see the conditioning, what will you do with that awareness? Will you keep living inside the lines someone else drew for you, or will you redraw them in your own bold, unshakable voice? Because the truth is, you don't need permission to be powerful. You just need to remember who you were before the world told you to be afraid of yourself. But even when you begin to remember, something else gets in the way, something that sounds virtuous, even admirable. And that's the trap of being nice. You've been told your whole life to be nice, haven't you? Smile, agree, be easy to be around, don't cause problems, don't take up too much space. But let me ask you something honest. When you're being nice, are you truly being you? Or are you just being agreeable at the expense of your truth? See, being kind is beautiful, but being nice, in the way society demands, often means being passive. It means putting other people's comfort above your own clarity. It means choosing peace over progress. And worst of all, it means trading your authenticity for approval. How many times have you laughed at a joke that offended you just so things wouldn't get awkward? How often have you said, "It's fine," when it absolutely wasn't? How many times have you let someone cross your boundaries just because you didn't want to make it a thing? That's not kindness. That's fear with a smile. And Nietzsche warned us about this form of self-betrayal. He believed the modern world had twisted strength into a sin and rebranded weakness as a virtue. He wrote, "The weak are always forced to lie, to be nice, because they are not allowed to show how much they suffer." When you play small, when you hold back your voice, your power, your vision, not because you want to, but because you fear how others will react, you're not being humble, you're being hidden. And there's a cost to that. You don't just lose moments, you lose momentum, you lose your edge, you lose touch with the part of you that dares to lead, speak, create, and disrupt. Look around. In today's world, we're drowning in mediocrity disguised as politeness, meetings where no one speaks the truth, relationships where no one sets boundaries, careers that drift for years because no one wants to take a real risk. Is that really what you want to protect? Because playing small won't shield you from criticism, it just guarantees regret. And here's the most sobering truth. There are people far less talented than you, far less insightful, far less capable, doing exactly what you've dreamed of, simply because they weren't afraid to be seen. So the next time you feel yourself holding back to keep things nice, ask yourself this: is this kindness, or is this silence in disguise? And more importantly, if you were no longer afraid of being too much, who would you finally become? That's the question Nietzsche forces us to confront. And to answer it, we have to look at one of his most misunderstood ideas: the will to power. Now, forget what you've heard. This isn't about dominating others or climbing some ruthless ladder. Nietzsche's will to power is about something far more personal. It's the inner force that pushes you to rise above who you were yesterday. It's that deep, raw urge inside every human being, not just to survive, but to expand, to grow, to assert your presence in the world unapologetically. But here's the catch: that force doesn't just show up. It's buried underneath years of conditioning, fear, and self-doubt. And unless you consciously awaken it, it stays dormant, like a flame that never touches air. You've seen this in people, haven't you? That one friend who finally leaves a toxic relationship and starts to glow differently. The co-worker who speaks up in a meeting and suddenly commands the room. The artist who stops asking for permission and just creates. That's the will to power, not in a textbook, in real life. It's not about being aggressive, it's about being real. But to get there, you have to fight a battle, not outside, but within. You have to confront every lie you've told yourself about why you can't, why you shouldn't, why you're not ready. You have to break the habit of shrinking just to make others comfortable. And you have to be willing to stand alone if that's what truth demands. Nietzsche believed that strength was something you build, not something you inherit. He wrote, "He who cannot obey himself will be commanded." In other words, if you don't take control of your own voice, your own vision, your own life, someone else will do it for you. This is where your transformation begins, not in waiting for the right moment, not in becoming perfect, but in claiming the space you've always quietly deserved, out loud and without apology. Because the weakness that keeps you playing small doesn't die on its own. You have to kill it. You have to starve it with boldness. You have to suffocate it with action. You have to strip it of power by choosing truth over comfort, again and again. So ask yourself, how many more days will you wait before you stop living like a shadow of yourself? Because the truth is, until you reset the voice in your own head, nothing on the outside will truly change. The weakness that makes you doubt yourself doesn't just come from what others say. It thrives on what you keep repeating to yourself. Think about the things you silently whisper every day. I'm not ready. They probably won't listen to me. What if I fail? You don't just hear these thoughts, you start to believe them. And belief, repeated enough, becomes identity. But here's the wake-up call. That voice was learned, which means it can be unlearned. Your mind is not a fixed mirror, it's a canvas, and every thought you allow shapes the way you see yourself. If all you feed it is doubt, hesitation, and fear, then of course you'll hesitate, and of course you'll fear. But if you feed it intention, clarity, and challenge, everything begins to shift. You may not even realize how loud your self-doubt has become because it disguises itself so well. It says, let's be realistic. It says, now's not the time. It says, you're too old or too young or not qualified. But let me ask you, who benefits from you believing that? Certainly not you. Let's say you have an idea to start a business, create something, or simply speak up in a room. The moment that spark ignites, the old voice tries to smother it. That's not for people like you. But where did that even come from? A parent's fear, a teacher's dismissal, one embarrassing moment years ago that now dictates your entire self-image. Why should that voice get the final say? Nietzsche wrote, "No one can build you the bridge on which you, and only you, must cross the river of life." That means no one is coming to rewrite the narrative in your head. No mentor, no partner, no motivational quote. That job belongs to you, fully and unapologetically. You have to become the voice that interrupts your doubt. You have to say, number, I will not let this thought decide my future. Number, I refuse to call my fear a fact. Number, I am not here to be invisible. And it doesn't happen all at once. It happens moment by moment. Every time you catch yourself shrinking and choose to stand taller instead. It happens when you stop rehearsing your limitations and start practicing your possibilities. Because confidence isn't born, it's trained. And every time you rewrite a fearful thought with a courageous one, you move closer to the version of you that this world desperately needs. Not the small, silent version that plays by old rules, but the one that lives wide awake, fully alive, and dangerously honest. So now the real question becomes, are you willing to think thoughts that scare you a little, but free you a lot? Because that's where it starts. But it can't end there. Changing your thoughts is only the first strike. Breaking the pattern means taking action when it's uncomfortable, when it feels unnatural, when every cell in your body wants to go back to what's familiar. Let's be real. The pull to stay in your old habits is strong. It's easy to stay in the same job where you're underpaid, but at least secure. It's convenient to keep the same friends, even if they secretly mock your ambitions. It's comfortable to keep nodding along when people talk over you because conflict is just too much. But let me ask you, how many more years are you willing to live beneath your own potential just because the pattern feels safe? Breaking the pattern means risking discomfort. It means making decisions people won't understand. It means stepping away from what's known, even if you have to walk that path alone for a while. Nietzsche didn't just talk about overcoming weakness, he lived it. He suffered deeply, physically, emotionally, mentally. Yet through that pain, he forged a philosophy that didn't worship comfort. It worshipped becoming more than what the world said you could be. Becoming the kind of person who creates their own values, their own voice, their own rules. And that requires courage, not the loud kind that posts quotes online. The quiet kind that shows up when no one's watching. Courage looks like finally saying no when you used to say yes. Courage looks like showing your real opinion even if it cost you a few likes. Courage looks like walking away from the role you've played for years just because it no longer fits. You won't always feel ready. You won't always feel brave, but you don't need to feel it to be it. Sometimes courage is nothing more than doing the thing while your hands are shaking and your voice cracks, but doing it anyway. Because every time you do, you chip away at the pattern. You weaken the default setting that's kept you quiet, small, and unsure. And you begin replacing it with something real, something rooted, something that looks more like you. So ask yourself, what's one small rebellion you can make today? Not a grand gesture, just one honest, brave decision that says, I'm done living beneath myself. Because once you break the pattern, even just once, you'll never unsee the power you've been sitting on all along. And that's the truth that most people never discover. They live their entire lives afraid of being seen, not realizing the real danger was never in being noticed. It was in being ignored by themselves, by their own soul, by the part of them that came here to speak, to move, to build, to lead. So here's what it all comes down to. You are not weak for having doubted yourself. You are not broken because you've played small. You were trained to believe that silence was safe, that playing it cool was wise, and that doubting yourself was just being realistic. But now you know better. Your silence was never safety. It was self-abandonment. Your doubt wasn't realism. It was residue from someone else's fear. And playing small, that wasn't humility. It was hiding. Nietzsche believed that transformation isn't handed to you. It's earned. He said, become who you are. That's not a slogan, that's a challenge, a call to battle, not against the world, but against the lie that you are less than what you feel inside you. Because that voice inside you that wants more, that wants to be louder, freer, more powerful, it's not crazy, it's not arrogant, it's you, the real you, waiting. So let this be the moment you stop asking for permission. Let this be the line you cross, from silence to speech, from shrinking to standing, from doubt to direction. And if you're still wondering where to begin, Start here. Say the thing you've been afraid to say. Show the part of you you've been hiding. Take one action you've avoided because it made you nervous, and do it before you feel ready. Because your voice is power, and the world doesn't need another echo. It needs you, raw, unfiltered, and finally awake. If this spoke to something deep inside you, then speak back. Let me hear from you in the comments. What's one part of yourself you're done hiding? What weakness are you ready to destroy? And if you know someone else who's been playing small, share this with them. Don't let them forget who they really are. Subscribe for more truths that challenge the noise and awaken your inner fire. This isn't about motivation. This is about liberation, and it begins with a single word spoken out loud: enough.